right, Sam here with you on Thursday, May 31st, last day of the month. And as it's a Thursday, we polled the members looking for requests for crypto video analysis here. We've got three contenders today. First up is Ethereum to the dollar. So I've got a 3-hour here on Bitfinex. Now, I'm not going to go through all this because we've analyzed this coin many times. The question now is here over on the hard right edge. Do we have a potential pivot in here that would be a contender for a wave 2 low? So if we think in the larger degree here, we've had a clear 5 waves up. Complexity, as we've seen with much of crypto, we've had a complex correction here. Now, do we have a contender here for a wave 2 that would set us up for all of this action here going much higher, right? So that's a contender. So we can look at a couple things right off the bat, just getting the larger degree here in play. So we could look for a median line play here. So let's get the original recipe back on. All right, so looking at that, of course we want to look at this low here. So from swing low to swing high, but get it right on there. So you can see now good contender for us. A second here, we know a second anywhere from the 50 to 786, and we're kind of right in between it. Now we're going to dig into that pivot. There's a little additional confluence there that offers support to that being a good pivot. So, but we can see here now, while we don't get a golden, we're in between the 65 and the 786. So reasonable spot, very, very common for a wave 2. Now, if we're going to go up for a wave 3 and we're going to hit the traditional targets where if you get a wave 3, so I'll just do it for you here. I've done this many times. It's a good exercise here from wave 1 to the projected wave 2. So we can see the hot box up here. So we get a candidate here. We get a target for a wave 3. If we're going to go 1, 2. So we got a couple of things at play here. There's the corner pocket. So if that low holds, we don't know when it gets there, but we've got an 80% probability of getting to the median line, right? As I often remind you, that's the best odds in trading. So again, the first criterion is that pivot has to hold. Right, so if we have the pivots properly identified, right, which is why I spend so much time working on identifying confluence at particular pivots to support the idea that we have a pivot we can work with. So we've got all the conditions here for a 1, 2. Now let's see if we can. We're kind of pushing here, as you can see, and we'll look at it in a lower time frame here. We've got the effort here to get this to come off with a motive wave. So we've got, it actually would be an impulse coming off of that in 5. We'll see if we can break this little swing high here and give us a clear 5. But right now, this would be the play here. So here's your long-term target. We don't, it could be out here that we have no idea, but we can just use that as a reference. So there's an algo target sitting right at our median line. So that would be a contender here, and the assumption isn't that would be it would be this, that we would not be trading for that as the 3. We want the more traditional 3 target up here on this upper parallel. But that's a place where you could see a reaction. Right, very, very common. You could see something like that, and then from there going from there up towards that upper target. Again, we don't know how long it's going to take, but that's something that I would have certainly as a target if you're getting long down here as a contender for a reasonable target. Right, that'd be a hell of a trade right there. So let's see if we can qualify this a bit more. So with all of that done, I'm going to strip this off here. We know that target is sitting up there. So what else can we look at here? So I'm going to go down to the 1 hour and see if we can build a case here for this low. So looking at it here now, so let me open this up a little bit better. All right, there we go. There we get a better look at it. Okay, so I am in my primary account have this as a much like Bitcoin, a complex correction. So that being that we're connecting two ABCs. All right, so here's the first one, clear as a bell. There's our W. We get our counter trend X wave. Then we go down into an ABC. Now, it gets a little dicey here. It's the same problem we have with much of crypto, particularly the majors, where we have this tendency for these skinny second waves, right? There's a lack of depth of that retracement here. There's not a lot of clarity in it, but here the reason I'm keying off of this. So if I go down to a 15-minute, there is here. I'll do it for you. So if I go to a 15-minute, there's a clear case for a 1. So let me get this back up here. So here's, you can see it pretty clearly here. So if I just go in the smallest degree, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now that's obviously way too high. So let's bring that, we'll go all the way to minuscule. All right, so you can see it there, that you have the ingredients for a 5, and it's a motive wave. Pardon me, it's an impulsive wave. We don't get an overlap of the 4. So I get a nice clean 1 wave coming off of this proposed B high here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's my 1. It's there. It's a shallow ABC, but it's there. So the reason I defer to this, and I like this as my pivot here, let's say, well, which pivot do you use? Well, if I use this as my second and I get right on top of it and I come down to my third, look what I get here. So high probability that the algorithms have used that. Again, I can't, it's the kind of thing, you know it when you see it, right? So how do I know? Because I can see this. So using Elliott wave, all right? So here's the good, it's a good example of what we try and teach you. It's this combination, right? So again, as I will often tell you, the algorithm does not care about the Elliott count, doesn't care. It's just looking for pivots. So why do I defer to this here and say, well, clearly that was an important pivot? Because of this, right? So here's the front run on the 50, which is typically when they'll take, and we go right to target, and then we look at this reaction. So again, it's the kind of thing, this is the one algorithm that we can identify, the only one that I know of, that we can identify that leaves these tracks where we can very clearly see what it's done. So swing high, swing low, up to the 50. They front run the 50, they get their target. Boom, reaction. So I know that was an important pivot. Now I put that in an Elliott context and try and dig in here and go, oh, that looks like that could be a 1, 2. Well, would that make sense as a 3? Well, clearly that's an impulsive wave. So here would be my 3, 4, 5 coming down. I've got kind of an ugly ABC into this 4, but the tell is here. And it's not the reaction at the 50. It's this. It's the reaction at the target. That is always the tell. So with that in play, then now I can back this back all the way back out. Let's go back to our hourly and think about that. Okay, well, I've got a good contender here given that price action here to build a case here for more confluence behind the idea that I've got a contender for that pivot. Well, let's what else can we do here? Well, let's work our market geometry. So if I go to my W low and pull from my X, do I have anything here? Well, when I see that on the outside edge, well, immediately we've got to look at the alternates. Let me get that hot. Let's get it over here. Now, let's see what we get here. So if I go to, I'll check them all. So if I go to shift, now that looks better to me than modified shift here, even though we're getting the intersection here of the median line. I think this looks better here. Here's my 1.5, which I'm containing this outside edge, where often if you see these wicks breaking through, you'll see a runner on the edge. So here we can see how many times. So here was the corner pocket. Boom. Right. I think if I recall, that was so from swing low to swing high to swing low. Right. So we came right to a 50. So we got the median line pretty quickly, right? But at that point, you wouldn't have known necessarily that you were working with a modified. But nonetheless, so there it is. So we get an A, then we come upper parallel here. We get in that pocket between the upper parallel and the 1.5, and then we get the 5 clear waves coming down. So I've got, this is kind of a little resistance here that's going to be tricky to get through. So if I pull that off, and we think about where that would be. So potentially now, dialing in here, let's go down to this low. Can we get a 5 wave out of it? Can we get a motive wave coming off of that low? Well, we've got a contender here. We need to get a push here to get these highs. So let me take this off here. So let's try and label it. So if I look here, we've got potentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would be going in. Now we can go up a degree off of that. We can go to, there we go. Okay, so possible. Well, let's think about it. Let's break it down. Does it play? Well, if that's 1, 2, so let's wick off the 1, right? Just force a habit. Always want to wick off the 1. All right, so we hold the 4. Right, so we've got a contender for an impulsive structure. Okay, there's my 5. All right, so let's scrunch it a little bit and let's bring it up a bit here. Okay, so they're contender here. So let's look at the relationship here on our third. Okay, so beautiful, right? So we're right to the 50, so we get a clean algo target here as a contender here for our fifth. Now, we're not there yet. Look at this resistance. We got to get through that median line. Often that will be resistance, and we could very well pivot here. So then you got to ask, is that a truncated fifth? We'll see. We'll see if we may get through it while I'm recording this, but that's definitely the resistance. So you have a combination. Look, here's the Vegas wave. Right, so you're getting a little, here's the 233. We're going to have additional resistance, but can we get through that median line? Right? Previously, fail. Are we going to get through this time to complete the impulse to add validity to the hypothesis that this is a good pivot low here for a wave 2? Right? Hard to confirm it until we get this structure to tell us that we have a contender for a new trend, and that would likely be just the one wave. That could be the one wave of the one wave. No way to know. But first we want to see can we get to a new high. So what I would just add an alert on that. Just keep it there so I don't have to watch it all day. So if we get that adds confirmation. So if you're not trading this already, right? So no surprise here what I would advise you next. If we come up to this, so let's just for the sake of the discussion, say we get through this and we get at least to that algo target. That would give us a 5-wave structure. We'd start the retracement. So if we're going to go up here to this 5, and now we're hypothetical here. Now we're going to look here. So if we get that 5, so to finish it, we'd be looking 5, and then we'd want to see this come down in 3, something like that, to set up the big move. Right, that's what we're after here. Can we finish in 5, come down in 3? We don't know what that looks like, but come down in 3. We don't know if we go that deep. We could do the 50. Just don't know. So we're looking for that structure, right? And ideally, here if we went down to the 15-minute, we could see the subdivisions there to tell us that we were through down here, if and when we get there, and if and when this plays to that roadmap. But that would set us up as a contender for now the 1-2. So we'd have possibly 1, 2, then going 3, 4, and 5, all going up there. So let's put that, and we'll go subminuet. Okay, so that's what we're trying to play. Can we get this push up for the 5? Now, if you're, so I would not be a buyer here. I certainly wouldn't be a buyer running right into the median line. If you're not in, my advice would be to wait, right? So it's in play. We've got good potential structure here to confirm this low. Can we get that 5-wave structure, and then the next trade is just sitting there waiting for you. Now you got to be patient. That could take a couple of days. We don't know. Could be there tomorrow. Could be there overnight. You just don't know how quickly that can move. But that's the structure we're looking for. So if you're looking to be a buyer here, I would be, perhaps initial 35% of it at the 50, the remainder at the 618. Again, depending on what the structure looks like as to where your stop placement would be, you could certainly keep it tight under the 65. You want to give it a little more room because we know a 2 can go to the 786. Depending on what the subdivision looks like as to, stop placement is a little premature for that, but nothing beyond the 786 in my view. Not enough there. Why take that additional risk, right? So if it doesn't hold here, then maybe something else is at work, and maybe this is an A, B, C. You just don't know. So I'll wait and I'll look for that, but this is definitely worth waiting for, right? That risk reward will be very favorable. So definitely a contender. Now, so Bitcoin's kind of doing the same thing. We're just sitting here at these double tops here. But as I look over at Bitcoin, same kind of thing. We're not quite to challenging that high. So same kind of thing happening here. This would be good confirmation here. Just the kind of thing we're looking for across most of the majors is confirming the recent swing low. So with Ethereum, definitely one to be watching. I'm very bullish long term. So for me, I'm already long, have been for some time. So this would be potentially a place to add, looking to get that 3, 4, 5. So we take it all the way back out to our 3-hour and wrap it up here. See where we potentially could be going, right? In this larger degree, if that's 1, 2, this potentially just the one wave of the third wave, because of course our third wave would be way, way, way up here. Wait, so can I even? So if we think about it, we'd be up here. So as I showed you this earlier, so come here. If I take from my swing low, if that's 1, 2, we know that target for that third way up here, right? There it is. Okay, so this if we're going to get there, this would just be, if that's our target, this would just be the one wave on the way up to that target, right, which is 1,300. All right, so in play, one to watch. Patience here. Don't force a trade. Let it set up. Let it come to you. All right, guys, I'll wrap it there.